fatigue, the central governor theory, and basically the relationship between both. So I'm going to quickly just run through it and give you an insight into what the central governor theory is. So first of all, it's important that we define fatigue. So fatigue is extreme tiredness, typically resulting from mental and or physical exertion or illness. So fatigue can be explained in the short term and long term. So fatigue in the short term is absolutely going for a gut-busting run and coming to that extreme fatigue. Long term is a build-up of stress over time and fatigue over time, and results usually in illness. Now, fatigue, stated by the central governor theory, is a projection of your mind, sending signals to protect your body. The process in your brain limits the amount of muscle fiber recruitment, which limits your performance, even though, interestingly enough, performance can be increased by music, environment, caffeine, self-motivation, or even drugs when you are in this fatigue state. So the central governor theory sort of has its own, I suppose, definition about fatigue and what fatigue actually is, and it has been tested as well. So it sees fatigue as a sort of a protection mechanism for your own body. It allows the brain and gives the brain function to override your physical ability and basically shut the body down before you do any serious damage to yourself. And when I say serious damage, I mean permanent damage. So this kind of states that, you know, you're never ever going to hit that point of fatigue that's dangerous, because your body will shut you down before you hit it a lot of the time for most people. Which is different. When I say protection mechanism, that's one extreme, and it's a bit different from the negative self-talk that happens during events. They're the normal doubt or excuses. So usually a lot of you might be able to relate if you're on a long run or you're doing runs and you kind of start to tell yourself a story like, oh, this is going to be my last run, or I'll do one more set. Then you get to that and you move on, or you give yourself doubt like, oh, I went heavy on the legs yesterday, I should take this easy, or I have a tough training week coming up, let's not push it too far in this. So I'm not talking about that or the self-talk or the doubt. I'm talking about just the sheer involvement your brain has and the ability it has to shut your body down if you ever come to the point of extreme fatigue. So Tim Noakes, someone who's really championed this, and he noticed that people were stopping exercise before hitting a plateau when measuring their VO2 max, so measuring their oxygen consumption. He saw they were consuming more oxygen when stopping, so a plateau cannot be considered. And this only happens when consumption declines or stops, so a plateau can only physically happen once this consumption stops. So he was noticing people weren't plateauing, but yet they were stopping, so they were hitting that state of fatigue. So why were people stopping? Was it actually fatigue? Noakes continued his research, moving on to more pacing studies and monitoring heart rates of cyclists and runners, and he noticed they all paced themselves when fatigued and would speed up as soon as they saw a finish line or could feel the end coming. He noticed also that runners could hit a new level of energy when they saw loved ones, be it on the sideline, end line, and that this emotional response caused them to perform the best. So it is interesting that athletes could suddenly reach new levels of energy at their most fatigued state, showing us that when we are feeling our most tired, we can perform our best, which we've all seen, especially in the GA space. In the last 15 minutes of a game, you're at your most fatigue, yet it's the most intense in a lot of games, and that's kind of when you are able to bring it up another gear and push another notch. So it clearly shows that emotions has a huge effect on performance. So is fatigue purely an emotion which our brain uses to regulate performance? Not necessarily. It's a big part, so it plays a role, but it doesn't necessarily regulate performance. So here are things you can control beforehand. So the first one is specific exercise. So teach your body the demand. A 200 meter sprinter versus a marathon runner. If you're training yourself for that adaptation of 200 meter sprinting, that's brilliant. If you go to run a marathon, you're not doing yourself any favors in terms of fatigue or fatigue management. So you must do the specific exercise. Second is visualization. So understanding that pain or discomfort is normal, and in some cases it's unavoidable. You got to understand that you're going to go through it. Mental training is really useful. So knowing that damage is unlikely seems quite important for these sort of events. Knowing that you're able to push, you're able to pick up another notch, you're able to keep going without doing any damage to yourself. Because if it comes to that point, central governor theory would claim or would state that your brain would not allow that to happen to your body. And then the third is pacing, learning to control your pace. going out the gates too hot will result in your body hitting some shock and reacting in a negative way a lot of the time, unless you train that specific way. So going back to a video I did on specific adaptation to impose performance or demand, the SAID principle, it's important to understand you will adapt to what you train. So the three things: specific exercise, visualization or mental strength, training, and pacing. They're three very important things that can help you kind of negate fatigue, and understanding that fatigue is going to be there, but you still have another gear. So the main message is, it seems that you're able for more than you think, even in extreme fatigue states, and that a lot of the times it's our own emotions that are holding us back, but it's our own emotions that can bring us to another level as well.